Welcome to the workshop.
Hi, if you have a hobby or light duty planer thicknesser, the chances are a component like this JD2 could ruin your day the next time you're in the workshop trying to prepare some lumber. This is the solenoid switch that comes from the control unit of my planer thicknesser, and I've had to repair it 3 times now. You can't get replacements. The company that makes it, KEDU, no longer make it. I think probably the reason is it wasn't a very good design in the first place. And so you're probably left with the option of either throwing away your machine or having the whole thing rewired, which probably cost as much as buying a new one in the first place. But you can effect a repair on this component, and I'm just going to show you how I do it. What you'll need for the repair quite possibly will be a spring from a biro, small screwdriver and some needle nose pliers, some sandpaper, something like a nail file would be a very good idea, a cardboard nail file which you can cut down for some of the filing that we need to do later. I've found 2 things can go wrong with this switch. First is the contacts. Some of the contacts inside the switch can become very dirty, and you'll normally notice that as the motor stopping and starting during use. Worse than that is one of the internal springs will break, and then the whole thing won't function at all. If your machine is stopping and starting during use, you really need to get it fixed quickly, because if you run the machine like that, the chances are the motor will overheat and it'll have a thermal fuse inside it which will blow. So the easiest thing when it starts playing about is to whip the control box off, get this component out and effect a repair. So to disassemble the unit, there are 2 spring clips holding it in on either side. We use the pliers just to pull this edge down, lift up and remove. Same on the other side. Then this switch unit lifts off the solenoid like so. Now we need to disengage the lever, so we pull the springs and out it comes. That just stays on the springs, we don't need to worry about that. Then we need to take the actual switch apart, and you can do that by pressing down on the contacts and holding the case. That slides out from underneath. You may find it trickier when you do yours, because mine's been taken apart 3 times now, or this is the 4th time. Now inside you can see there's a plastic bar with a number of cross bars of metal. They all have a spring behind them which allows them to rotate slightly like that, so we get a good contact on both of the terminals. The only problem I've had has been with this particular set of contacts. They're obviously taking an awful lot of power at startup, and it's sparking a lot, and that's causing the problem. Now we can lift this central bar out, check all the springs. You can see them through the holes in the top here. Check that the contacts spring on those springs and rotate freely. And that's fine, because I've just repaired mine, and you can probably see that this spring in here is lovely and bright, because that's the new one that I've just put in. The first problem you'll probably find if you tackle it quickly is that you've just got dirty contacts. and as I say, it's only on this particular set of contacts that I've had any real problems. But we clean them all up with some very fine sandpaper, some wet and dry paper, or a very fine nail file. And that's probably the easiest one. If you get a very fine nail file, you may need to cut it. That's why I say a cardboard one. Cut it down and you can file the tops of the contacts to get them nice and clean again and smooth. It's very difficult to polish them, and a polished surface would be a lot better than a rough one. So just bear that in mind. It probably won't last as long as fitting a new switch, and I generally find that I get about half as long a life after each repair as I did when the machine was new. So we'll clean off the contacts on each of these terminals, and for those that don't know, the contacts are these little pads down here. Just clean those off, and the same on the switch bar. You'll see there are contacts along here, and you can see that it's got rather hot, and that's the problem that I have with this machine and this switch. This particular rail in the switch gets very hot, obviously sparks a lot, and that causes a problem. It's got so hot that the spring behind the contact has broken. So the first repair would be to clean all the contacts up. If your springs are alright, you can put the unit back together and it should work fine. If your spring's gone, then it's a little bit more tricky. You need to replace the spring, and you do that taking a small screwdriver, flat blade screwdriver, force out the old bits of spring, take a spring off a biro or similar. It needs to be one of the slimmer ones, because you need to be able to get it in that gap, and this is just slightly larger than that gap, which is great because there's a bit more space actually inside, so when you push the spring home it actually captures it and doesn't let it fall out. Cut off a piece of spring which is about as long as the window in here. Put the contact in at a slight angle, like so. Compress the spring and force it into that gap. And as I say, there's more room inside, so once you've got it in there, it should stay there. You should find your contact then rocks nicely, and you can reassemble your switch. So bar goes back in. Just check by operating it manually that the switch is open in the rest position, and when you pull against the springs, these three terminals close and this one is open. Then we put the lid back on there. It's a case of lining up the spade terminals on the top. Like so, push it home. And this lever needs to go back on, so extend the springs, twist it round, put it on. Just check that's working freely. Take the solenoid pack. You'll see in here, this is actuated by the solenoid. So let gravity pull that down. Push the lever into the slot there. And you'll see these two terminals need to go into these two holes at the back at the same time. Push it all together. and then put your clips back. That goes in there, wraps around the side parts on the switch unit, and that's it. So I say, I find that my repairs to this switch last about half as long as its initial life was, and it saved me replacing my planer 3 times now. So it's worth the half an hour or so's effort to take it apart and clean it up. Hope you find it useful. Let me know how you get on.